We're here at the Vertical Flight Society's e-VTOL event, and it's exciting because things are literally taking off, but still I sense there's a lot of work to be done. And Anna, what you guys are doing with CAMI to create a welcoming environment sounds like the right thing to do. Why don't you describe what CAMI is? We'll have a conversation.
Sure, yeah, thanks. So CAMI is the Community Air Mobility Initiative, and we are focused on supporting state and local decision makers with figuring out urban air mobility, understanding what eVTOL aircraft are, what their opportunities and challenges are, and how to integrate this new technology into their communities and into their existing transportation landscapes in the most productive, most positive, most responsible way possible.
Now, this is starting as an industry initiative in terms of getting the suppliers that are at this conference involved in it, right?
Yeah, so our early members organizations are companies in the UAM ecosystem, not just manufacturers, but standards development organizations, government entities, educators that really want to be good neighbors and want to support communities as they figure out how to adopt this new technology. So we are absolutely looking for additional support. We have a lot of resources planned to deploy for these decision makers, and the faster we can get the industry behind the effort and give us the resources we need to do that, the faster we can get those tools in the hands of the state DOTs and the other folks that need them.
Well, I want to talk about those types of folks in a second, but first let's talk about you a little bit and your background. I mean, you've been involved in this before there was this.
Yeah, I've been around for a while. So I'm one of the co-founders of Terrafugio, which started making the transition light sport aircraft, which drives on the road as well as flies airport to airport. So I was founding chief operating officer there, did that for almost a decade, and then stepped back to focus on policy and certification issues. So I felt that was an area where the new industry of weird, cool things that fly needed some support, and it was something that I was personally very interested in. So I've been consulting in that space for the last 5 or 6 years, and as part of that work realized that we had a lot of effort focused on the federal level and on the regulators, but we were kind of leaving behind the communities. And for urban air mobility to do what it needs to do, that is who we need to be talking to. We need to be supporting those local decision makers. So CAMI was born. We incorporated CAMI at the end of the summer of 2019, so late July, right around Oshkosh timeframe, and then have been figuring out our exact niche in the ecosystem and identifying our early supporters since then. So we are a 501c3 educational nonprofit, so we're not an advocacy group, we're not lobbying, we are really focused on providing the general public and the folks that represent them in the transportation world as much as we can.
Well, it seems like you have a very diverse board, too, in terms of all the elements that are going to be needed.
We try to cover the entire spectrum of what you have to think about when you start thinking about urban air mobility in a community, and that is a really large space. So everything from sort of the classic like noise issues, which obviously are very important, but that's not where the conversation ends. So there's noise, there's vertiport locations and how those interface with things as simple as curb space at the bottom of your building. So if you put a vertiport on top of the building, what happens if you have a bus lane along the curb at the bottom, and now you've got hundreds of people trying to get in and out of their cars in the bus lane at the bottom of the building, right? So second order effects like that, integrating with existing transit. Communities have invested billions of dollars in mass transit. We don't want to make that obsolete. We want to support that and work with that. So equipping them to really think about kind of the unintended consequences and things that we can leverage this new technology for in ways that may not be obvious or may be unique to their jurisdiction, but equip them with the common set of knowledge and understanding and sort of the questions that they should be asking as they consider this.
Yeah, and the local officials can't control what's in the air, but they can control what's on the ground with permitting and so forth, right?
Yeah, the who controls what's in the air is a question that gets a lot of airtime, pardon the pun. So with the drones, very low altitude operations, there is some local jurisdictions that are trying to control that. I think the common wisdom is that FAA owns the air, but the impact that what's in the air has on the ground is something that local jurisdictions can control. So even if they can't control what's flying, there is precedent that states that if you're dramatically impacting what's happening on the ground, that is still in some ways a land use that is then under the jurisdiction of the community. So it gets complicated really fast, and I think the more we can help people understand these nuances and understand how to integrate in a way that people want that use, the smoother it'll go for everybody.
The ODView readers, many of them are rural markets, they are rural broadband operators, and it seems like there's a huge early opportunity for air mobility.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people tend to think of urban air mobility as being confined to major metropolitan areas. That's not really how we see it. So we tend to talk of UAM as having sort of 4 different components. One is that inside the city metropolitan area, rooftop to rooftop kind of activity that a lot of people imagine first. But then there's suburbs to city access. And then what's probably getting into being more interesting for the rural communities is what would be called an edge city, either to another edge city or to the major urban hub. So you're going 50 to 100, 200 miles, not on necessarily a fully vertical aircraft, but maybe an electric conventional takeoff and landing aircraft. So that would be part of that ecosystem of bringing aviation more tightly into our transportation landscape. So we consider all 3 of those sort of distances to be part of UAM, as well as then accessing our commercial airline hubs, so connecting into what we normally think of as commercial air travel. So there's a lot of opportunities for getting into those commercial airports, as well as sort of the regular everyday transportation.
Well, and imagine you have to think cargo, not only people, but cargo, right?
It's not just cargo and people. It's actually, especially in rural environments, medical applications are really great. So we have the potential to use some of this technology to get first responders to the scene of a medical emergency in less time in a rural environment than we're currently seeing on average in an urban environment, leveraging this technology. So especially as we see like consolidation in emergency services in rural markets, and response times are getting longer because population density is getting lower. So this technology really does have the potential to reverse some of those trends and bring some really immediate emergency services to the more spread out environments.
So how are you outreaching to the local people? And there's thousands of them, right?
There's a huge number of stakeholders at the local level, and everybody's just a little bit different in terms of what their law landscape looks like and their policy landscape and what they can care about. So the communications piece is a challenge. Right now we are focusing on building out the resources that we want to communicate to those people, though we have already seen a really gratifying demand from particularly the state DOT level of folks reaching out to us saying, hey, we've seen this coming, like, can you help us understand it? So we're having those conversations while we build out our references and our resources, and then we'll do a concerted effort to get those into the right hands. We are doing our first event. We're putting together in-person programming. We'll be doing a half-day workshop in March 16th in Glassboro, New Jersey at Rowan University. It's co-located with the Vertical Flight Society Infrastructure Workshop that's happening there on March 17th and 18th. So this will be an opportunity for someone who's completely new to urban air mobility to come get oriented, really understand what all the words mean, what are the key concepts, and then hopefully be able to stick around for the VFS event to have a deeper technical dive into some of the issues that we present at a higher level.
Well, excellent. I can imagine this is just the tip of a big iceberg. So, Anna, congratulations on getting CAMI going, and good luck as you progress.
Well, thank you very much. It's exciting, and it's really gratifying for me to be able to support the industry and support the communities that we're trying to serve all at the same time. So,
Excellent.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.